This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. The holidays mean more travel, more shopping, more time online, and more personal info in places that could expose you to identity theft. That's why LifeLock monitors millions of data points every second. If your identity is stolen, their US-based restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed or your money back. Get more holiday fun and less holiday worry with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
From Wall Street to the White House, this is the Larry Kudlow Show. Now, it's time for Protecting Your Future, sponsored by Colonial Metals Group. Here's Larry Kudlow.
Hello, folks. I'm Larry Kudlow. This is Protecting Your Future, sponsored by the Colonial Metals Group and its great CEO, Mr. Paul Stone. And today we're talking about protecting your future by keeping a sharp eye on money and politics. And we've got two wonderful people here. Terrific stuff. My dear friend, David Asman, great news anchor for both Fox News and Fabulous Fox Business. David Asman and I once tried to reform the entire country of Argentina. Maybe there's a replay going on. And my brother, John McLaughlin, ace pollster and strategic consultant, CEO of McLaughlin Associates. By the way, John, Jim McLaughlin was great on the TV show last night. He was really, really great. So,
yes, he told me I look good on radio.
you have a face for radio. I get it.
Yeah, sure.
So I'm going to work off of, let's see, two pieces here if I can get this right. My piece was a lesson for the GOP, simplify, simplify, simplify. And John and Jim McLaughlin's piece up at Newsmax, Americans support Trump tax cuts, pass them first. You and I are both saying the same thing. All right, John, lead us off, because the polling for tax cuts is incredibly important. And what we learned in this crazy continuing resolution fight the last 3-4 days is how chaotic politics are going to be, including politics in the House. So let's just have one reconciliation bill with tax cuts, right?
Right. Plus, the importance is getting it done as soon as possible, because I'm coming at it from a political view, you're coming at it from a policy view, but the idea of passing the tax cuts, you went through this with Reagan. I used to work for Arthur Finkelstein with Reagan. The tax cuts didn't take effect till 1983, and we lost 26 House seats in the midterms. Trump, the first time he served as president, they did health care first, because Leader McConnell and Speaker Ryan told them they needed the savings to get the tax cuts passed. Where do they get savings from? I mean, tax cuts it's money that belongs to us, not them. And finally, when Trump got around to doing it, we lost in the midterms, lost both houses. And when we lost both houses, he got impeached and bad things happened. But the tax cuts were going into effect in 2019 and 2020. We had great polling for him. In fact, on March 11th, I went to the White House, met with him in the Oval, and I saw you there that day, because the polls all had President Trump ahead. And President Trump, he greeted us by saying, I think I have to shut travel down because of COVID.
Yeah.
And
that was March of 2020. March of 2020. A fateful day. But he had to do it. He was right.
And I said to him, that's too bad, because these polls have you ahead.
Yep.
We need to get that economic growth back, because right now in this polling, you have 71% of the voters support no tax on tips. You have 82% support no tax on Social Security. By the way, 72% of Democrats, 66% support the no tax on overtime, 59% among Democrats, and making the 2017 jobs, no tax cut and jobs act permanent. You've got 70% of all voters approving of that, 58% of Democrats. Use that political capital right away to get growth, so we could hold our majorities in the midterms, make them bigger. But we don't get it done, and we don't have economic growth. Historically, those midterms are not a good election for the party at the White House.
Somebody turn the radio down, or there's some noise in the background. David Asman, let me make one point. The making the Trump tax cuts permanent. Now, the corporate tax is permanent, But he wants to drop it to 15, which is a good idea. But making them permanent in the individual taxes, here's my point, will not cost anything. It will increase revenues as it increases growth. What you think?
I think you're just citing history. I mean, we saw it, of course, we saw it with JFK. You wrote a book about it. We saw it with Reagan. You were there. And we saw it with Trump in 2017. From 2017 until now, not only did the tax cuts not cost anything, we have increased revenue 48% since the Trump tax cuts went into effect in 2017. Increased by $1.5 trillion. The irony, though, and you and I have talked about this on television, you have written about it as well, is that in many ways, some of our biggest obstacles to getting this done first thing in January 20th, the extension of the tax cuts, are Republicans. Democrats we knew would be against it just because they're reflexively against anything that Trump would do. But there are too many Republicans who believe that tax cuts, even the 2017 tax cuts that we know didn't cost anything but gained 48% increase in revenue, even though we know that, they believe that tax cuts cost money, and it has to be worked into the budget as a cost. That's the interesting thing that happened this week. In fact, I just read this Axios piece came out today, I guess, that Hakeem Jeffries, the Democrat, the leader of the Democrats in the House, Hakeem Jeffries, maybe once is working with Trump to kill the debt ceiling. Now, of course, Democrats want to kill the debt ceiling in order to spend more money, but the debt ceiling was an impediment to extending the tax cuts because these number crunchers inside the Beltway continued with the refrain that tax cuts cost money, so you have to have offsets, you have to have pay-fors in terms of lowering. But that's not as we know, that's a static analysis. It doesn't take into account what has happened every time there has been a major tax cut going back to the 1920s. But if Trump pulls this off, it would be something. Of course, Hakeem Jeffries has a lot up his sleeve, so be very careful. Be very careful with who you're dealing with. But it's a very interesting development here.
I would get rid of the debt ceiling. I said that on the air. I wrote about it. Get rid of it. It doesn't have anything to do with getting rid of spending. It's irrelevant. There's no teeth to it. All it is throwing sand in the gears for Trump's agenda. It's going to come up again. This whatever the deal was that they voted on last night. They're saying the debt ceiling will expire in March. They don't know, but it's just nonsense. It just allows Democrats to start in this government shutdown mode. And it's all going to get in the way of Trump's agenda. But I want to say, on the issue of revenues, the guy who has the story right, fabulously right, is Mike Crapo, Senator Mike Crapo from Idaho, who is the incoming chairman as of Jan 3rd of the Senate Finance Committee, which will write the bill. The other guy is Jason Smith, chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, who will write the bill in the House. Both of those guys believe in something called a current policy baseline, which simply means extending ongoing tax cuts doesn't cost anything. You don't have to reprice it out. It's just like the current services spending baseline. That thing goes on forever. Spending always goes up. Nobody calls it a big impediment to, worse, higher deficits. Same thing. Taxes should be scored the same way as spending. Crapo has it right. Jason Smith has it right. Now, to John McLaughlin, Jason Smith wants one reconciliation bill. Okay? And to John McLaughlin, I'm going to add to this, and you'll understand my language. Sources close to Mr. Trump believe Mr. Trump, wants what he calls it, one big, beautiful reconciliation bill. One big sources close to him. Okay, if you read my meaning. So
yes, sir. It's
there. It's just a question of getting, let's get John Thune on board and some of the senators and some of the other members of the new administration. John McLaughlin, you got to go in there yourself with your polls.
Well, by the way, I will. And at the same time, you wrote a great column in The Sun that I'll make sure that you'll see. And John Thune, in 1996, I worked for Senator, he was then Citizen Thune, and he was running for Congress, and we were losing 2-1, and we ended up with a big primary win 2-1 because he was running on a reform agenda of tax cuts and term limits back in 96. So he knows.
John's a good guy. He's a fine guy. I spoke to him at some length this past week, and he was concerned about timing issues. How fast can you rustle up, a good tax bill? Okay. And I do think somewhat mistakenly, he thought, and other senators, that somehow you could get a first reconciliation bill with, border money and defense money, in a couple of weeks in January. That is not going to be true, John. That's what the CR epidemic just showed us. You follow my logic? The CR just showed you how hard it's going to be to get anything through the House that would pass the Senate. So John's a good man. He just needs to be persuaded that we can put the thing together in hopefully a couple of months.
Right. Well, if we could get it done in the House first,
yes,
then it should sail through the Senate because their majority's a little bigger. But they also have to do it in the beginning of this year. I mean, I agree with you, Larry, all the time when Donald Trump was running in 2016 and he said, "Do you think I need a tax cut bill?" I said, "Yes." And he said, "Where did I get one?" I said, "You called Larry Kudlow."
Well,
he called you.
No, it worked. I mean, we got everybody's. Steve Moore was involved in the thing. Art Laffer was involved in the thing. Then we, brought in Steve Mnuchin and Steve Miller. Steve Miller is a pivotal guy. He's a good man, smart fellow, deputy chief of staff now. But again, I think he thinks you can get some kind of border bill through reconciliation fast. And I'm saying, forget that. Nothing's going to be fast. That's why you have to do. And the other thing is, to my friend David Asman, who knows economics very well, let's put more money in the pockets of middle income working folks, people. Okay. I mean, supply siders, we talk about lower marginal tax rates and the incentive effect, which is very important. They will work and invest. But in the basic sense, David Asman, let's put more money. I mean, you look at the numbers from McLaughlin has. Tax-free tips is so popular. Tax-free overtime is so popular. Yep. Put more money in their pockets this year, David Asman.
And that's what people voted for because they have seen the money in their pockets diminish over the past 4 years. I mean, it's clear, I don't want to get into a P match on what's more important, the border or the tax extensions. But the fact is it really is true that Trump closed the border in 2017 with executive orders, and Biden opened the border in 2021 with executive orders. So a lot of what needs to be done could be done by President Donald Trump by himself without having to go to Congress at all. So the focus could be more on the brain trust, which would include most of those people that were involved in your tax cut in 2017 could be brought together again, come out with a good bill and put it in. But again, you're right. The people of America, 77 million strong, and probably more now because Trump's popularity is greater than his margin during the actual election. So he's got the support of the American people behind him. And if they start feeling more cash in their pockets, it's going to turn around. And of course, the larger point or another point of that is when taxpayers, and this is, we talked about it, when will the lesson be learned? When taxpayers keep more of what they earn, they work harder. Yep. They grow the economy. They create more revenue. And it's happened every time, going way back to the 1920s, the Mellon tax cuts, et cetera, and then JFK, and then Reagan, and of course in 2017. But it does change the whole economy, and it changes the attitude of the people. People become more positive. Investors think about investing more because they're more positive about the future.
I got to take a break. I want the blue-collar boom to start this year.
Yes,
I don't want to wait. Blue-collar boom start this year. I got to take a break. David Asman, news anchor for Fox News and Fox Business. John McLaughlin, ace pollster, both dear friends. I'm Kudlow. Be right back.
Larry Kudlow. From Wall Street to the White House, this is the Larry Kudlow Show.
Welcome back, folks. We're talking politics with David Asman, Fox News and Fox Business, and John McLaughlin, ace pollster, CEO of McLaughlin Associates. John McLaughlin, what do your polls tell you about spending? Because really, the Republicans too, pay-goes, offsets, pay-fors, you just don't hear any talk about that anymore. And the CR was no different. Honestly, we're going to have to restrain spending. We've got Elon Musk. We've got Vivek Ramaswamy. I call them the Doge brothers. But the GOP's got to do something about this. You know, they got to help Trump here.
Yes, because in the poll numbers I'm referring to on our website at McLaughlinOnline.com, 66% of all voters say the country's still on the wrong track. That was as of December 17th. They say the economy is getting worse, not better, 55-34, and 84% have been negatively impacted by inflation. 48% to the point right before Christmas, they can't afford basic necessities. So Washington is totally out of touch because they keep on spending. And the biggest tax increase we've had in the last 4 years is Biden inflation. By the way, Biden, 40 approve, 57 disapprove. Trump should not let him off the hook. He's leaving him a big mess because they don't want to stop spending now. They want to have a continuing resolution to keep spending, which triggers more inflation. So the average person out there, they want tax cuts, they want better jobs, they want economic growth, but they don't want to keep spending and keep having to pay the penalty of inflation. So it's going to be a really tough job.
You know, Dave Asman, I think that the GOP's got a messaging problem because they need to listen to what McLaughlin just said. They need to link spending cuts with Bidenflation. They may say, you want to conquer Bidenflation, let's start spending less. They never seem to get that messaging right.
Well, I think Elon Musk has got it. I think Vivek Ramaswamy have it. The Doge brothers, as you say, are keyed in on that. And John, I think they could use some of that information because that you have some of the recent polls because they know how to make that work. And there is this, you know, I remember going way back. We talked about Argentina, which we were successful at, by the way. We did turn Argentina around
for a while.
They had 6 fat years, and then. And look at Malay. I think we laid the groundwork for Malay, so we did okay there. But remember, there in the 80s, there was this battle between the Tories in England because Maggie Thatcher had taken over in 79, and then Reagan came in 81. They didn't believe in supply side. The Tories didn't believe in supply side. Right. They needed Reagan to show them the way. And here, there are a lot of Republicans who don't believe in the supply side. And again, obviously, you got to work the message on the people who are unhappy, the general public who are unhappy. And a lot of that can be done through mediums that didn't exist in the old days, like the X postings, et cetera. But you also have the Doge brothers, and they are going to not only do tax cuts work, and we have more examples of that now from what happened in 2017 than we did in the 1980s. Not only do tax cuts bring in more revenue, but we also have this major front of not only cost cutting from the Doge brothers, which I think they can get to $2 trillion pretty directly. I don't think it's an impossible climb at all to get to a save of $2 trillion, but also regulations, because regulations are a form of taxation. Right. And when you cut, and also when you cut regulations, you have more productivity. Productivity brings down inflation. Right. So there are different ways to lick the inflation bug. And
I'm just saying to John, particularly John McLaughlin, John, you should poll directly on this. But the trick is, look, for 4 years, Republicans have blamed Bidenflation on excess spending. Okay, that's good. All right. And I think that worked to a large extent. But now that the ball is in the GOP's court, we have the majorities, Republicans' majorities in the House and Senate. They've got to continue. They've got to say, look, Bidenflation is still out there. That's a problem. It really is. So we need to slay it once and for all. And yes, we're going to have supply side tax cuts and better productivity and deregulation, but they have just got to use that in order to end Bidenflation. They have to restrain spending. They must. I mean, I had Rand Paul on the TV show last night, and he said, "Did we really need $100 billion for hurricanes with no offsets? Did we really need $10 billion for farms with no offset?" I mean, he's right. Rand is exactly right. And the GOP's got to get some of that. I only got about 25 seconds left, but that's my point, John. You had a poll on it.
Exactly right. We have polled on it.
Oh.
And by the way, the Democrats have polled on it, and they got their message. Their message is these tax cuts are for billionaires, and the Republicans want to cut Social Security and Medicare.
That's great.
They're already coming right at us. We need to get smart real fast.
All right. Terrific stuff. John McLaughlin, Ace Pollster, thank you very much. My dear friend David Asman from Fox, thank you very much. Folks, I'm Kudlow. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next weekend.
If you're a facilities manager at a university, you know students rely on the cafeteria for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and the occasional late-night snack. So when a dishwasher breaks down and dirty plates pile up, the mess hall can turn messy in the blink of an eye. Enter Grainger. With over 1 million industrial-grade products and fast delivery, the product you need now is never far away. So you can turn that dishwasher back into a lean, clean washing machine. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.